How's it going, guys? Um, it is. I don't know. I'm looking for a book I had. There it is. Of course, I put it all the way over here, didn't I? Let me get in here. Get everything all set up. It's. I don't know. The it's a little bit after. It's like 4:20 in the morning, but still quite late. I'm up at all hours like I normally am. Um, Sorry, I was adjusting the pop filter. I thought it'd be cool this time just to then I don't even do music or let's play or anything like that. Let's talk about uh, let's do a ghost story. That'd be good. Um, there's a lot of legends and lore in my area, Delmarva. Um, you know, a lot of it's linked to nautical history and then just of course the general history. This area is very old. Um, it's a lot like my dad used to live up in Maine, and I can remember back in like 2000, 2001, going up in Maine. He was, uh, they were renting out like this old building. It used to be called the Yellow Pumpkin. It was a tavern, but it was built in 1747. This house, and it was moved from the water up, a couple streets. And this was in Falmouth, Forsyth, Maine. Um, and the house was just teeming with activity. It was pretty unreal. But that's not what the story's. That's not my story. The point of the matter is that a lot of this area is very old. So there's a lot of rich history, and I don't want to let that die. This is my area. I love this area, and I had to keep that alive. Um, so I thought this would be kind of cool, and I've already talked about this story before. Some people have read it. It's in writing format on my Tumblr. It's buried in there somewhere, so you'd have to go looking for it. But um, this story sort of kind of um, combines. And like I said, this is why I pulled this book out because there's some information in here that I wanted to double check before. Of course, I didn't look at this before I started. Now, did I? Uh, but um, that's neither here nor there. My story involves the Cypress Swamp. Anybody who's familiar with this area knows about the Cypress Swamp. Well, not everybody, I guess, but the Cypress Swamp is a cypress swamp. Obviously, it's the most northern. I want to say Cypress Swamp in America. It's located just to the west of Selbyville, Delaware, and just to the east of Gumboro, Delaware. And it covers more or less, that area, expansive land there. And it droops a little bit into Maryland, and um, uh, what's the river? Um, I can't remember it. um, I was going to say Potomac, but that's not right, obviously. My brain. Swiss cheese, Swiss cheese. Anyway, that's not important. Um, Actually, maybe it is. Hang on. Well, while I'm talking about other things here. Um, Sorry. I just want to make sure I get this. This name's probably important. That the Pocomoke River. Yeah, it's not the Potomac, huh? Pocomoke. Yeah, it's a little bit different. Uh, yeah, I guess there's other names for the Big Cypress Swamp or the Great uh, Pocomoke Swamp. But it's a freshwater swamp. Okay, so it's the most northern freshwater swamp in America, I believe. And this swamp was a lot bigger, and you know, back in the 17 and 1800s. It's not quite as big as it used to be, and that's more or less because of a number of reasons. Farming, agriculture has, that blossomed uh, in I would say the late 1800s, but are mostly the 1900s. Once there was better equipment, and methods of basically clearing land. But also, a fire destroyed a big majority of the Cypress Swamp in the early 20s. I want to say it might have been closer to the 1930s. Um, there's a lot of rich history when it comes to the Cypress Swamp, and it started. Well, I don't want to say it started, but if you go back in the most recent years, like the 20s and the 30s during Prohibition, there was a lot of moonshiners in the swamp who built stills, and is believed that that fire occurred from a still exploding. And of course, once that cypress wood began burning and the peat in the soil below, all that peat was lost, and it just burned for weeks and weeks. It may have been even longer. I really don't know. But they said like even when they thought they had a good fix on the fire and getting it out, it would just the wind would kick up or whatever, and it would just explode again. So there are a lot of you know the swamp was lost in that during that time, and I imagine after everything had cleared, they more or less just they used that for farmland. Maybe I don't really know. But it's still quite large. If you ever are driving through Delaware, southern Delaware on Route 54, and you arrive through Laurel and Gumboro, um, when you're going through the swamp. It's not like it's just a little forest or something. You know what I mean? The trees, everything is different about it. Route 54 goes right through the Cypress Swamp, and the trees just overhang. It's almost like a Sleepy Hollow type thing. It would be great place to do like a video on that or something. In terms of the legend of Sleepy Hollow, because it's really there's just a different energy coming from the swamp. Um, Now before Prohibition and all that, in the 1800s, it was actually I'm sure a uh, sort of like a path for the Underground Railroad for abolitionists trying to get slaves to the north, and that's where we sort of um, go full circle here with the legend of like Patty Cannon, who was a uh, woman in the late 1800s, who basically, you know, among other things, ran this sort of reverse underground railroad where these slaves would come, and Patty Cannon and her crew would give them like a room, in hiding out of so they thought that they were on their way to the north and to the free states, because Delaware wasn't Delaware and Maryland was sort of right on the you know right on the line there. It wasn't completely a free state. Um, it was sort of up in the air. Um, and basically, she would, whether she would rob them and murder them or just send them back to the South. And of course, you can imagine slaves that, somehow managed to get away and got all the way up there and, were rounded up and taken back. They probably were killed or, worse. You know, I can't imagine, but that's where the story of Patty Cannon comes into play. She was in Reliance, Delaware, which is right on the line, and she got away with a lot of this stuff for quite a while because she would go over to Maryland, when the authorities from Delaware were after her, and then vice versa. So she just kept, going back and forth because Reliance is right on the line there on the Maryland Delaware line on the west side. Um, but the slaves probably came through the Cypress Swamp, because of you know, the camouflage. Obviously, it's a very, very thick swamp. It's not, it's not. You could easily get, hide out in the swamp. Uh, and there were people who almost like these swamp people. um, there's a lot of crazy legends and stories um, that include, like the witch's tree. That's a big legend. It's the largest, one of the largest trees, if not, you know what I mean. And it's right, you can access that through uh, the Maryland side, down like near Shepherd's Landing Road. You would go through there to the back roads through the swamp, like the dirt roads, and you can see the witch's tree. Unfortunately, it's sort of like an image of its former self, all spray painted and whatnot. So it's sort of sad what it's come to, but it's a beautiful tree, very old tree. It's probably from the 1700s, if not early 1800s, but it's a cypress tree. My friend said cypress trees grow very slowly, so I can imagine it's maybe even older than that. I don't know. But there's also a small little wooden bridge. People call that bridge the Suicide Bridge. I don't really know why, but you can drive over that, and that's also spray painted galore. People have left their mark. But anyway, it tracks a lot of kids, a lot of teenagers, especially during Halloween and whatnot. People, a lot of rednecks, I guess, do drive through it when they're in their trucks or whatever, and try to get stuck out there. But um, well, like I said, when you're going through the Cypress Swamp, there really isn't much of an announcement of it, you know, it's obvious, and it's probably takes about 4 minutes, maybe a little longer, going about 50 miles an hour on the road, and it's cool. It's full of twists and turns, and it's very I can imagine driving through the swamp during like a storm, or just a very wet scenario. That would be very scary. Um, there used to be in the early 2000s, from what I remember, a lot of signs like DUI killed here, DUI killed here, whatever, what have you. Just people who were drunk and drove off the road or whatever, hydroplaned off the road or however it was, and then what I mean. The trees are so close to the road, you hit the trees, you die. So it was kind of eerie. It's ominous to drive through there. It's not, there isn't. I think there might be one or two signs now, but there's still a lot of like little wreaths and stuff, on the trees. So it's clear, there's, a lot of people have lost their life in the Cypress Swamp. It's just a very dangerous, um, you know, road. But anyway, before that, before abolitionists and whatnot, I can imagine there might have even been, uh, a friend of mine who's she's, you know, I don't know what you would call her, maybe a medium, maybe not. I don't know. She sensed a lot of like plantations, maybe, and of course, I think there might have even been a little bit of some Wiccan stuff going on in the woods. Way back, maybe early 1800s, maybe even earlier. Um, and there's a reason why I believe that, but we'll get to that in a second, the story. But, it's just full of rich history, and it's definitely a must visit for anybody who's, if you come to this area and maybe you're not into going down the Ocean City where it's so crowded and there's, what I mean? Like, especially if you've been down there before, you've seen it, once you've seen it all, it's woo, like, Ocean City, um, tourist capital of the universe. But for somebody who's trying to go something off the beaten track, who wants to see something really interesting, full of, like I said, just backwoods country history, that's the place to go. That's a place I always recommend. There's tons of different things you can experience: historic buildings, sites, But yeah, like I said, the Cypress Swamp is definitely a must visit for anybody who's into legends and lore. I'm trying to say laurel, lore. Uh, in the Delmarva area, it's a um, very rich area. So with that being said, this story dates from 2006. I want to say, I believe it may have been 2005, but I believe it was 2006. No, no, it had to have been 2005 actually. Now that I think about it, it had to have been 2005. Um, I met a girl named Steffi. She's a very close friend of mine, and also one of my ex girlfriends, Katie, at governor school. Governor school is like it's like a summer camp for excellence. You know, people who are either artistic, musical in some way, shape, or form, or you know excel in academics. They go off to the University of Delaware and they do this sort of like summer retreat thing. And then, like I said, I met them through there. And that particular day, Steffi came down uh, and I mean, I can't remember what I know we did pictures, we did photos, you know what I mean? I just don't remember what else we did. Um, but she spent the night at my house, and then the next day, um, that might have been the day we did one of the shoots. Um, but that later that evening, she had to actually babysit a dog. She had a dog watch at a woman's house, a friend of her mom's, I believe. Um, and this was up near Smyrna, Delaware, near Polytech High School. Um, and she was gonna have her friend Monica, one of my friends too, but um, and it was her and Monica, and I was gonna come up, and we were just gonna have a good time at this house. You know what I mean? The whole house to herself. All we had to do was watch a dog. And the woman had like a hot tub or something. You know what I mean? It was just gonna be a fun time. And it was beginning of summer, and we were all just you know ready for that, I guess. Um, so she left, and I can't remember. I don't think I was working at the time, but maybe I was working. I don't know. Um, anyway, um, I don't know what time they got to the house from Dover, but um, I didn't leave until probably about 9 o'clock. I want to say a little bit after 9, maybe even 10. I didn't get there till very late, if I recall. I mean, maybe it was a little earlier, but I really don't. I think it was around that time. Um, Now, anybody who's familiar with the area knows you can go one of a couple of ways. Um, from Fenwick Island or Ocean City, more or less. You would go down Route 54 until you hit 113, then you could travel north on 113 until you basically got to Milford, and then it would hit Route 1 and ride Route 1 to Dover, and then you could cross over at any point, maybe at Rising Sun or any of those small little towns to get over to Route 13 to take you to Polytech High School. But I decided not to, you know what I mean? Yeah, at the time, I probably was just, it was the first couple years of me driving, so I probably just felt like going, you know, a different way. I don't know. But it's one of the few times I ever drove through the swamp at night. A lot of people would think you're, a little crazy to do that, but and that's just because if you had car troubles, you were in the middle of the swamp. That's not exactly the best plan. Of course, there's also deer, which could run out from the trees, and you would have no warning, and then that's a death sentence possibly. And if there's any weather, obviously, that there's another thing. But you know, anybody in their right mind would tell you that, what were you thinking? Well, you should have went through 113 and all that jazz. But I just, I also didn't feel like going up, sort of like to Georgetown almost and crossing down Hardscrabble Road towards Seaford. That was just seemed like it was even longer. and just as boring. It seemed like the best way was to go down Route 54. Because I knew I was gonna go through the swamp. I mean, it's like when you go down 54, you just can't. You know what I mean? That's always in the back of your head, and it was just like, man, this is gonna be fun. Um, so, um, like I said, it was probably close to 10 o'clock, 10:30, maybe even 11, maybe earlier. I really don't know. I don't remember the timing exactly, but it was in May, I want to say. It was either April or May, but I'm pretty sure it was around that time because it was, the beginning of summer. Everything, spring was here. Everything was green. It was very beautiful, actually. But I got to Selbyville and um, turned down, the extension of 54 to go through the swamp. Um, and I remember it was either after the swamp or before. I'd called Katie to see what she was doing. To see if she wanted to come out or whatever. Not that she was all the way in Lewis, but you know what I mean. Um, and I spoke with her briefly, I guess. Um, but I got to the swamp, like I said, and I can remember this now because really, even at night, because I've been to the swamp before at night, and not with me driving. I was with my sister, and my cousin, and there might have been another time too. Um, so it's not like it was the only time, but it was the only time I was driving and I was by myself. And I just remember that there was just no cars, you know what I mean? And it was late, but there's usually one guy going through or something, or a local who's just, he was out in Gumboro getting a couple drinks or something, you know what I mean, at the liquor store. Somebody would have been, you know what I mean? And there was just nobody. I just remember this vividly. There was just nobody on the road, and when you approach the Cypress Swamp from the east end, heading west, there's like sort of like a little, slot. You hit the trees for a second, and then it clears up for like briefly, and then you're in the swamp. And like I said, it's obvious. You're in the, you know what I mean. And I can't remember if it was a full moon or if it was no moon or what, but I just remember just how dark it was going through this this swamp with these trees. Just they reached over top of the car, and it was just quite an ominous experience. But I don't think I had any sort of idea of what was in store. Um, I thought it was going to be just another ride, not that exciting. Dark, yeah, but I was gonna go through the swamp and come out at 13 eventually and head north and eventually hit you know uh, get up towards Smyrna, and that'd be the start of my night, and that would really be that was it. But little did I know that it would be quite an experience, and I was kind of getting a little chills right now, just because of remembering everything. Just bringing it back, and how clear and vivid I can remember it still. It's just it was weird. Um, Now like I said, I got into the swamp, and there's a sharp bend to the left when you first enter, coming from the east side, and then there's a sharp bend to the right, and after this sharp bend towards the right, that's when I came around the bend, and up ahead there's this person walking on the left side of the road, uh, and I couldn't make this person out quite yet, you know what I mean? But it's a very narrow area. It's not like she was a quarter mile away. Now it was close. Um, and as I got closer, I managed to make out that this was a woman. Um, but it looked like she was dressed up for Halloween. Like I she just looked like she was dressed like a witch almost. And anybody would probably just be like, it's probably some person out just dressed up for the, you know what I mean? Maybe they think they're practicing Wiccan or whatever. You know what I mean? But what I remember, when I think about it today, is just how out of place she looked. Uh, you know what I mean? Not to mention that, you already don't look out of place dressed up like a witch in the woods. Um, she just didn't look like she was from this era, maybe. You know what I mean? It didn't look like what she was wearing was something you bought at, the local costume shop. It looked like, like a real sort of peacoat type thing, like a, whatever, I don't know, like a dress, like with a corset, that whole getup, but black. I mean, very black with a shawl, black hair, and what appeared to be maybe some sort. I don't want to say hat because when I bring that up, my friend who's very knowledgeable in Wiccan stuff will say that that's not a legitimate thing. The witch hat is just a, you know what I mean. And like I said, it all happened so quickly. I really don't remember. Maybe it was like a cloak or something. You know what I mean. It was just a pointed type thing. But I just remember as I got closer to her, how she, like she stood out. Like I said, like she just didn't fit in at all. And I can remember sort of slowing down, but not really. I mean, you wouldn't slow down. I mean, even if you were driving down that stretch by yourself and you saw just a normal girl on the side of the road, you would probably still be a little, you know what I mean? Like, maybe I would stop to make sure she was okay, but that I don't know. But this was just off the wall. There's a girl in the middle of you know a cypress swamp, dressed like a witch, walking from God knows where. There's no cars. There's no car on the side of a road. There's no, there's a few houses near the cypress swamp that she could have originated from, but you know what I mean? Like, well, you just you wouldn't be caught dead in the cypress swamp at night. I mean, there's a few people who might be crazy enough, but I don't buy it. This was weird. And like I said, as I slowed down, sort of, like I said, I probably went from 50 miles an hour down to 40. It wasn't like I slowed to a crawl now to really inspect what was going on. I mean, I slowed down, because I was avoiding her, really, because like I said, it's a tight road. She was right on the left, in the other lane. It wasn't like if somebody were to come around the other bend that I was approaching, speeding or whatever, you know what I mean? They would have ended up in my lane to avoid her if, they even saw her. You know what I mean? Like I said, she was the only reason why I saw her was because my headlights casted sort of like it was one I want to say it casted much light on her actually. If anything, it was just like a shadow, you know what I mean? Like in between where the lights around the trees were and whatnot, it was like this dark space. So it was clear something was I was approaching something. And then like I said, as I got closer, here was this woman. And then, the scariest thing about that was when I drove past her and I looked right at her. I mean, just the darkness, where that cloak would have been or whatever, and the hair, it covered up her face. There was like no face, you know what I mean? And it just this black face, just it stared right through you. You know what I mean? Like it. I can't really explain in a better way. You know what I mean? As though, just imagine, being somebody from an era that is not this era, and uh, somebody drives by in a vehicle. Like, imagine that kind of, like, what they would, you know what I mean? Like Paul Revere, just watching somebody drive by. Imagine the face that they would make. That's probably, like a blank stare, like, what the fuck? But I mean, that's what it was. It was a blank stare, like it stared right through me. and there wasn't a reaction. There wasn't, you know what I mean? It just a look right through you, and head back forward and kept walking. And like I said, I'd started to slow down, but I went around that bend, and I just can remember the chills of just that experience. I wasn't gonna turn around and find out, you know. I don't know what this group this thing's deal is. You know what I mean? Like, what if I go back around and she's in the middle of the road and I can't go? You know what I mean? Like, just how scary would that have been? So I maybe I nowadays I might have had more balls. I would have driven back probably to figure out what was going on there, but uh, I'm not sure I wanted to know. Um, but to this day, I'll never forget that night coming through the swamp and seeing that. Was that just a person out, was doing shenanigans, spray painting shit, whatever, practicing witchcraft? I don't know. Or was it something more than that, and it was just the right place at the right time, and it'll never really happen again? Or I've tried looking up information about anything like that, or anybody else who's had experience who might have, I figured there's got to be more than just me who's seen, what I mean, this person before, or this cloaked figure. But at the same time, you know, I don't know. Like I said, I went out of the swamp, and I was on my merry way and went up and had a great night with Steffi and Monica. But yeah, I'll never forget. Yeah, I'll never forget that experience. So there's a little ghost story for you from my area. Now get some sleep, or Patty Cannon will get you.